Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show where the Teach Better team is live every single morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, May 10th, which means, shout out to my mother, it's her birthday, but also it means that we have a good morning show for you. We have good news stories. We have some wonderful holidays, and then we also have Chase joining us, which if you guys are not familiar with the work that Chase is doing, you are in for a treat. We are going to dive straight in here, but please begin your morning by filling up that coffee cup, and we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Chase, thank you so much for waking up bright and early to talk shop with us on the Daily Drop-In.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I've got my coffee. I had my little granola bar, so I'm ready to roll.
You know what? That's the thing we never discuss. What do you pair with the coffee? So a granola bar is a great choice at 7 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it's kind of turned into like just survival mode of I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and it's like I don't have time for hot breakfast, so whatever I can stuff into my pockets on the way out is usually my go-to. So that's where I'm at.
That's totally fair. I don't think it's a good idea to stuff like warm bacon or waffles in your pocket out the door. It just doesn't work. It gets sticky in the car. So
yeah, I mean it'd be delicious. It'd be a great way to start your morning, just smelling like bacon, but not great.
You know what? It's good to have goals for the long term, right? Maybe that will be something that we'll figure out in a year or two. But I think granola bars in the morning, definitely the way to go. Nice plan. You know, Chase, for educators who are going to be popping in this morning, listening on Teach Better Talk podcast after the fact, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, the work you do, kind of all that jazz?
For sure. I'm Chase Melky. My home base is Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I've been for most of my life is in the Southwest area. My primary job right now is a secondary instructional coach. I taught high school English, communications, and positive psychology for about 12 years, and now I coach teachers. But my moonlighting job, kind of my main job now, is traveling all over the place, doing virtual speeches, in-person speeches, a lot of writing around specifically the topic of teacher well-being, teacher self-care, and how do organizations support better teaching by supporting better teachers. And that's been kind of this wild ride of helping people instructionally, helping people personally, helping people professionally is what I get to do. I get to nerd out about happiness and thriving, goal setting, and performance. It's kind of a beautiful gig I have right now.
You know, I love this topic, but I feel like educators have been talking about this for so long, and some educators have found a niche that they are finding success in, and other educators are like, oh my gosh, Chase, this is such a big idea that, you know, is there really a right solution? What's been your feedback for educators?
Yeah, the thing that I think most people are mistaken on when it comes to burnout and well-being is it's not this dichotomy of it's either entirely up to the organization to help create those great working conditions. It's not entirely on the teacher or the individual to take care of themselves. It's very much a both and. And so what I've been really trying to help on the teacher front or the individual front is there are actual research-based strategies that can help us get a sense of well-being, a sense of purpose and thriving. And on the organizational lens, there are definite things we can do to shift working conditions, simple little things that don't even take a whole new initiative or a whole lot of money or time to do. So just really helping people see their own personal power of what they can do, as well as how do you advocate. And if you're a school leader, what are the things that you can do to support?
See, Chase, this is why I was so excited for this morning's conversation, because I know it's May. I know that educators are eager to get to the end of the year, but us being able to discuss action steps that we can take, even though it's May, right? It's not too late to continue to find the right fit, not only for you, but for your school building so you can best support students. I mean, this is what it's all about. So I'm so excited to dive into this passion space with you today as we get started, because I think there's going to be a lot of easy takeaways that we can all choose to really get involved in this topic. So I really appreciate you waking up bright and early to talk shop with us.
For sure. Absolutely.
Before we get started, Chase, we have this little tradition. We use a free app called Happy Feed. It was recommended to us, a few months ago at this point. But we document a moment of gratitude here on the show with our guest. And what we're able to do is not only obviously take the moment to appreciate, the things around us in our world, but also this free app that we use allow us to go back and revisit moments of gratitude. So not only here on the show, but also at the Teach Better conference coming up in October, and kind of anytime we can find a reason, being able to reflect back on those moments, those happy moments, those grateful moments is kind of fun. So we're going to get started with that this morning. First, if I was to ask you, Chase, something that you are grateful for, appreciative of, what would be your initial thoughts?
Yeah, the instant go-to is my wife, my wonderful, amazing, beautiful, and talented wife. She's a second grade teacher. We work in the same district. And not only is she just an amazing educator, but just how supportive she is of, I get up early and I do these conversations and I travel a lot to speak, and she's just an absolute rock for our family of making sure we have stability and making sure my kids get to school today when she also has to get to school. So she's just an amazing person who really, really helps support other people.
I love that. Partner in crime. That's how it's supposed to be.
For sure.
We take time all the time for a moment of gratitude, but it's so wonderful to have somebody on the show shout out a personal relationship, right? It's not only, I don't know, like a typical go-to is like, we really appreciate my teacher team, which is wonderful. I'm not negating these grateful moments, but so wonderful to also give shout outs to people that support us in our personal lives so we can be successful in our professional lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love that. So good. We are going to get into our brainstorm bank segment this morning. We get to do this early on Tuesdays and Thursdays is our first segment that we start out. And then we will head into our good news and our holidays for today. So if you're here along with us, feel free to add your thoughts in the comments, participate with us, and we'll be right back for our brainstorm bank. Good morning, everyone. We have Chase joining us for our daily drop-in this morning. We wanted to kick off the morning by saying hello to Holly Stewart, who's in the comments. So good to see you, Holly. Patricia's out listening over on YouTube. We really appreciate you all joining us bright and early this morning. We are currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Special shout out, though, if you were listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast, thank you for not only subscribing, but rating and reviewing the show. We love being able to hear your thoughts and hear your feedback. Chase, we have a theme this week as we get into Brainstorm Bank that has to do with just like crafting strong professional development as an educator yourself, and also as somebody who gets to go out to school districts and also work with teachers. I'm sure you have an opinion of how we can craft strong professional development. What are your initial thoughts?
Oh my gosh, the idea of crafting is such a great term. That idea of I take it in my own power of how do I create the professional development that maybe I'm not receiving necessarily with my district or in my circumstance. And so I think for a lot of educators, especially those who are diving on social media right now and being a part of Teach Better, it's recognizing that if I'm not getting it in my localized area, who are the thought leaders? Who are the people who are sharing a lot of great resources that I can access online? I mean, probably one of my best professional development spaces is the library, of just getting really nerdy and diving in and books around any topic that I'm passionate about or writing about or trying to understand. The other element I think that's super important is trying to really build a sense of autonomy. And if you're a school leader by chance listening to this, it is how do I give teachers a little bit more of that control and that ownership to access what they need in the moment. A lot of times we assume we know what people need or we have our own personal focus, but if you even allow a couple hours through your professional development or even a couple half days, whatever you can spare, to helping people just get the resources they need, I think that's what it's all about. Is even if it's not happening in my building, there are so many brilliant people out there in education that are producing content and ideas that we can access.
So I want to dive into like 5 different things you just said. So bear with me. One of which though is you noted the library. So we gotta start there. That's
Yeah.
what you mentioned. You are somebody who likes to consume books. So tell us, what book should we be consuming? What's a go-to? Do you have like a few book recommendations you can kick off our morning with?
Yeah, my nerdy realm is in the realm of positive psychology and understanding human well-being and human thriving. And so kind of the base that I dove into was a book called Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman. He is one of the founders of the field of positive psychology, of studying human thriving. And it's a great opening idea of understanding all the different elements that allow a person to thrive. It's not just having like pleasure in the moment and fun in the moment. It is, how do we have meaningful interactions as well? And what are the strategies beyond that can be really supportive? So that's one of my wheelhouses right now, is diving in there. I got to give a shout out to my friend Weston Kieschnick. He just wrote a book called Atlas, which is all on student and engagement and what are the 5 major things that every successful engaging lesson has. And I mean, he's just a brilliant human being. He is so engaging himself, and so for him to like take his nerdiness and his passion and put into a book, I would highly recommend for individuals.
You know what I really value is the opportunity educators have to not only read educator books, but also dive into those other topics that may not seem as directly aligned to what practical things we should be putting in the classroom, but really understanding the human body, the human mind, the elements that make up the whole child, so that we can, implement them in our classrooms. And the focus of, going into psychology, especially the concept of happiness as a whole, is a really interesting topic for educators to learn about, because it's so applicable not only in our personal lives but to our students as well.
For sure. And I think there's some guilt that goes along with teaching, of like, oh, I need to be reading books about teaching and thinking about teaching. And I mean, any study around the concept of creativity shows that we have to branch out of what we're normally used to. We have to start diving into concepts and ideas that aren't necessarily within our field. And in a time when we really need a lot of creative solutions, I think it's all the more reason why educators should give themselves permission of, so what if this doesn't have directly anything to do with your classroom or students? I guarantee it's going to help you make some of those connections of being a more well-rounded human, more insightful and more creative with your work.
Oh, I love this emphasis. I do this a lot with podcasts, where I find myself, yes, I listen to so many educational podcasts. For those of you listening, if you've not checked out the Teach Better Podcast Network, definitely go check out the over 40 vetted podcasts that we love to support. But sometimes I'm just like, I can't consume more education information. I'm tapped out for the day. But you turn to something that is just a little bit away from education, or a lot of ways away from education, and it's like consuming completely new information. I can still find those connections. Again, bettering that whole educator concept is so valuable. I appreciate that reminder this morning. I think it's important, as we choose books, choose podcasts, or anything in between, give yourself permission to go explore something that doesn't say teacher on it, right? Like that's a opportunity.
For sure.
The other thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on is the opportunity that we have to take ownership over our own PD. I think a lot of educators would agree with you, but it's tricky when you feel like you're just like a fish in the school of fish in a school building. So tell me a little bit about this concept, maybe however you want to begin, but I'd love to hear about the admin perspective, the teacher perspective, and then the ownership we can take in both roles to get what we need.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you an example of what our district just recently did, that we kind of spearheaded as an experiment. Is, we had 30 hours of professional development we had to get through the year. And typically the administrator would just tell us exactly what to do. But we piloted this idea where we took half of those hours, 15 of those hours, and people could opt into, if you want to design your own professional development for those 15 hours, we'll work with you. We'll help you establish what is your goal, what are your resources, what are your benchmarks. And throughout that time, educators could flex their time during those 15 hours. So if they did a conference outside of school, they wouldn't have to go during that professional development time. Coming up tomorrow, actually, we're going to host our symposium where everyone who did that autonomous group professional development is going to present their findings to the rest of the staff. And so we had individuals who were like, I don't need new change, like just give me the old professional development that works. So we had that option, but it has been amazing when you give teachers some space and some time, the great work that they start diving into. I mean, we have educators who are really passionate, exploring ideas in project-based learning and social and emotional learning, and even just looking at holistic systems of how do we build in a math and science academy within our school to help students who are going that route. So I think as a school leader, it is trying to be flexible. If you don't have to smash up and completely rebuild everything you do with professional development, but what are the little ways you can start to stretch that autonomy? Now, I'm sure someone out there listening is like, my school leader isn't doing that right now. Like, we're not in that space. And so from that point, I think it is realizing that so much of what we can dive into is the relationships within our building. So maybe if the whole professional development isn't really hitting what I need, how am I finding those little spaces to connect with colleagues who are also passionate around a topic? What would it look like if during a co-planning period with a colleague, we just start to dive into what's a lesson we want to experiment with and what would be some strategies to support that? And let's just take this one lesson and try to revamp it a little bit to learn some new skills and strategy that I think, again, we can drift towards it has to be a complete rebuild, but so often it just starts with these little grass movement tweaks. And like you say, this crafting around small strategies that can help us improve or get just a little bit better every day.
Ooh, you just said that sentence that we know and love, right? A little bit better every single day.
Right.
I really value this balance between the power that educators have in a school building, right? As an administrator, maybe you're providing specific block time. You're really differentiating for your teachers. You're modeling best practice. You're really meeting the teachers where they're at, depending on the topic they explore, and allowing them to have a voice and choice in their PD. Such a fan. But also the opportunity that whether you're being handed that opportunity or not, teachers can go choose to be collaborative and choose to explore and challenge their own thinking, which is a perfect reminder for May. I will say, Chase, I love what your school is doing because in a way, I've worked in a building that found that happy middle between these like beautiful perspectives we're giving, where they did a little bit of like those 15 hours were in like an ed camp format, and there was 5 topics, 5 tracks you could go into. You chose the track for the year, and that group did meet as a group of 5 or 6 or however many staff members you had broken up as they choose their topic. But you kind of got to decide how you explored that topic. Maybe it was via book study or kind of anything in between. I think you're giving educators this morning a lot of choice in how they can go pursue learning, which is super valuable on a Tuesday morning in May.
For sure. I think that it's really important to advocate, especially now. I mean, the worry is teacher retention and teacher burnout right now. And I think a lot of administrators are also burning out and they're just like, I don't know what to do to help. So I think the more teachers can come up with a plan and present that of like, here's what would really help me. Here are the steps that I would like to take. I think more than ever, a lot of school leaders are receptive to that. But it does take that risk as a teacher of I'm just going to try something or I'm going to present an idea. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to, kind of find the ways to craft it on my own, but at least I'm going to try.
I love it. Patricia in the comments is noting again that she loves this like EdCamp format, loves the voice and choice that educators are allowed to have in this process. Super, super good to have you with us this morning, Patricia. And I love that you're kind of sharing your own ideas. That's exactly what this show's all about. We want to hear your thoughts as well. Chase, obviously, as we speak in broad terms for PD, I really, really appreciate these ideas. But with the work that you are specifically doing, what type of professional development have you found to be common that school districts are seeking you out to request to say, hey, Chase, we know you have so much to share, but will you come in and will you share on this specific topic because it's a really big need for us?
Probably the one topic I get the most requests for. I mean, broadly burnout. So what are the research-based strategies around burnout? But even within that, getting more specific around stress management. How does stress happen in the human body? What are the strategies that an educator can use? Because what's interesting in that conversation is talking about stress is a human experience. And so a lot of my professional development, has the lens of, as a teacher, how do I reevaluate what are my stress management strategies? But then I'm also looking at my classroom that my students are stressed probably more than ever before. So how do I use it strategically with my kids? If I'm a school leader listening to the conversation, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally identify with my stress management strategies and how maybe I'm lacking a little bit. So that's one of the main areas that I dive into, is broadly burnout and strategies, but really getting into the realm of emotional exhaustion and stress.
Do you mind sharing some specifics in those areas? I mean, gosh, you're like hitting the nail on the head of a buzzword that we're all like, oh my gosh,
Right.
help my stress level. Like, what's your
Yeah.
secret sauce? Do you have anything that you found to be really beneficial to share with educators so they can reflect on their own practices and be better?
For sure. So bear with me because I'm going to get real nerdy here.
Good,
One
that's
of my
good.
favorite things to do is to have straight away within a training, have people list out on one column, what are all your stressors, which sometimes makes people stressed out just looking at their stressors. But then on the other column, we list out what are all your stress regulation strategies. So how do you deal with it and how do you cope with it? And first of all, just within that first couple minutes, a lot of individuals are like, oh no, I only have like 4 or 5 strategies. So we set that as the baseline. And then throughout our discussion of stress and how to some extent stress is really good for us, it helps motivate us and drive our attention. We look at when is stress too much and how does it affect cognition in the brain with our emotional hijacking. But I like to cap it off with sharing with people the 5 Ds of de-stress. What are the 5 major categories of stress management? And so we'll start with the first one, which is the number one use that people have, is distract. So almost always exclusively when people are listing out their stress regulators, they're all distraction strategies. So I go for a run, I do a hobby, I watch Netflix, I play Candy Crush. And there's a reason why we do that. It is built into us, fight, flight, freeze. It's easier to just run from something and survive. But we over rely on that strategy because not every stressor can we distract from. Deadlines are still deadlines. Our students are still going to be there the next day. We're not just going to be able to escape them. So we start looking at what are the other broad strategies. The next one that is the most underutilized is dealing with the problem through problem solving strategies. So when you deal with it, you're brainstorming, what are all the different solutions I could try out? Okay, what's going to be my first one I'm going to experiment with? And when that doesn't work, what's going to be my backup option? The next one would be discussion strategies. So do I vent out loud? Do I journal? For some people, their spiritual faith is a form of just processing and putting into words what their stressor is. The fourth category is, how do I dispute the negative thoughts that are increasing my stress level? So if I stub my toe in the morning and I'm like, today is ruined, it's only 7 o'clock in the morning. So why am I making this really broad statement about my stress? So we pay attention to thought patterns and how do we analyze those? And the 5th D is, how do I develop mindfulness-based stress strategies? So how am I using deep breathing? How am I thought noting? How am I using body scans to get a sense of where my stress levels are at? And that conversation is so amazing because, first of all, a lot of educators have this moment of, okay, I need more strategies. But then they actually have some strategies that we discuss where they can look at, if my distraction isn't working right now, what could I try instead? So that's one of the pieces that I get the most moments where teachers are like, oh my gosh, their heads are nodding, they're having conversations, because I think we just don't talk enough about strategies. We talk a lot about the issues and the challenges, but not as much about the solutions.
Chase, I'm so glad you took it this direction, decided to get nerdy about this whole topic. That's what we need. I really, really value this emphasis on us being not only self-aware enough to identify what our go-to methodology is, but also understanding that these categories can also allow us to find the areas that we need to further develop. Because gosh, when you know the distraction element, I'm like, I can make a list for you of the things I turn to distract. And when I'm problem solving through needing a new way, if I continue to turn to a distraction, I may not finally find a way to overcome whatever I'm struggling with. You're really identifying the fact that having a lot of different options in each category gives us kind of a full picture of the opportunities that we can choose to chase after to relieve our stress, which is a perspective I honestly have not heard here on the show. So I really appreciate that reminder that we actually have more options than we may feel in the moment, which is so powerful.
Yeah, and that's another piece that a lot of times after we go through, people are like, "Oh, I actually do that quite a lot. Like I do journal, or I do process verbally, or I actually do think about my thinking quite a lot and dispute those thoughts." And so again, it's showing people that you actually have a lot of tools in your toolbox, and maybe we'll add some new tools as well. And then how do you use the right tool for the right need and situation?
Yeah, Andrea is commenting here in the comments saying the thought pattern is so key. I often find myself going through those negative thoughts on something small, which is, irrational. I think it's so important to kind of have those aha moments in some of this reflection, learning from you, Chase, to be able to say, oh, bummer, I totally do that.
Right. Oops. One of my favorite questions to ask people is if they consider themselves to be an emotional hoarder. So people who carry all their emotions with them, whether it's their emotions or not. I mean, I remember all the times when I would be teaching and it'd be like fifth period and I'm still angry about something that happened first period. And it's like, these are whole different students. It's a whole different area. And I'm like still angry about this thing. And so again, that awareness of like, yeah, this thought is not moving me forward. So how do I move to a better thought that's probably more accurate and is going to help me thrive and be more resilient?
Well, Chase, I do have to tell you, we've plenty of time to keep talking, but I know that just from the comments, Lori's commenting, "Oh my gosh, this is golden! I love this." I know a lot of people are going to be re-listening to the last 5 minutes, kind of over and over, saying, "Okay, what do I need to do? How do I take notes on this?" I'm actually still hurt by your comment that Netflix isn't going to solve all my stress level. I'm a little upset about that. I might have to email you later and tell you I'm unhappy. But if educators are seeking to find resources on this or continue to learn from you, typically we'd share your contact information at the end of the show, which we will. But if an educator is listening to this saying, Chase, you're my new best friend, I can't wait to learn from you forever, do you have avenues that educators can learn from you outside of just catching Daily Drop-In or following you on social media?
For sure. So the social media is usually where I post most of my information. So my handle at Chase Milky, but I also have a website. It's www.affectiveliving.com, affective rather than effective. And that's where I've been blogging for years, and I have resources out there. So I have a whole overview of the 5 Ds of de-stress. I talk a lot about what experiences I had teaching positive psychology, what are kindness activities that teachers can do, intentional acts of kindness. So that's another space where I put out quite a lot. I wrote a book called The Burnout Cure, which takes so many of these self-care ideas and so much of this research on burnout and well-being and puts it through the lens of educators. So what are 10 different research-based strategies we can use? And what are all the different examples of strategies around that? So those are probably the easiest ways to get at least an initial exposure to me. And then of course, shoot me a message, because I love nerding out about this stuff, especially when it's talking to people directly. So I encourage people to reach out if you want more information or want to dive in.
Well, we are going to need to talk about the book, but I will say,
Yeah.
hearing that you have resources on the 5 ways to de-stress, I feel like every educator needs to take a screenshot of those strategies, make it teeny tiny. I would be the educator that would print it out and laminate it and tape it to my desk.
Yeah.
So when I was finding myself stuck, I'd look down and be like, oh no, don't worry. Chase's 5, strategies are right here to remind me. Got to go through my checklist. So I appreciate that you have resources on that. Tell us a little more about the book. I know you gave us an overview, but when did the book come out? What was it like writing a book? So many in our community, so many people have aspirations to put their voice into kind of like a physical book that we can share with others. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, the book was published in 2019, I believe 2019-18, so right before the pandemic hit, which was pretty apropos. The whole process was interesting because I never really set out to write a book around burnout for teachers. But what had happened is, I had been teaching positive psychology for quite a while, and not many teachers were teaching that content. And so I was developing quite a lot of my own and putting out blog posts. So I was interviewed by the ASCD around how do you teach happiness? And the one thing I kept coming back to as they're interviewing me is teachers have to apply these strategies to themselves first. You have to take care of yourself. You have to know the research. And then I thought, why don't I put all of this out there into the world? And so that was part A. Part B was that I was actually dealing with a lot of burnout in my personal world. So I had a colicky nightmare of a newborn who just wouldn't stop crying. I had really challenging students one particular year. I was dealing with just staff drama that comes up in school systems. And I remember I was about to quit teaching altogether. I wanted nothing to do with the classroom. And it was this ironic moment of, why are you going to quit teaching when literally day to day you teach teenagers the science of resilience and gratitude? Like, apply this stuff for yourself, practice what you preach finally. So those are the two pieces that move together of, I'm going to take everything I've come across, try to figure out what are the practices that most have an impact on well-being, especially for a teacher, and put that out into the world. And then it just became a matter of how to put that into writing. I mean, I was teaching full time. I was adjunct professor at a local university. I had a whole bunch of jobs I was doing. So time management was really hard with writing a book, but I did the nerdy thing that I usually do is I took this massive goal and I chunked it up. I figured out exactly how many words I had to write by December and then how many words that translated to every single day. I calculated how much time it would take me to write that amount of average words. And so I ended up figuring out that I just needed 20 minutes a day. And so my routine or my ritual is, after we would put my son to bed and my wife is just hanging out and relaxing on the couch, I would just plug in my headphones, grab my cocktail, and I would just set a timer for 20 minutes and just start typing away. Now, sometimes it was complete garbage where I was like, this is terrible, I don't want to write, or I'm not in the mood. But more often than not, I wrote more than what I needed to because I just got into a flow state. So I would recommend anyone who's looking to do writing or publishing or putting their work out there is just do it. Just put it out there. Don't worry about if it's perfect. Don't worry about if it's right or wrong. Just present it to the world. And then from there, just try to figure out the little rituals and little pieces to stay consistent rather than waiting for the big moment or the big inspiration, because very rarely does it happen.
Such good advice, Chase. I know so many educators are exploring their own way to share their voice, and this is so many different ways and strategies that, depending on what's going to be the right fit for you, you can go and seek out. Before we kind of wrap up this conversation and head into our good news for the day, holidays, we have a good news article. Will you give us kind of like your soapbox moment? If an educator's jumping in right now, they're only going to listen to, the next 3 minutes of our conversation, what do you want them to take away? Because I'll tell you, I'm disappointed they're only going to listen to the next 3 minutes, because there's been so much value you've been able to share. This has been such a rich discussion. I know so many educators will be referring back to for a long time. But if you only had one thing that they were going to take away, what would it be?
Probably the theme of what I talk about, no matter whether it's writing, workshops, keynotes, or in the classroom, is twofold: that we give our best when we're at our best. We are better people. We are better professionals. We are better parents when we invest in our own social and emotional thriving. So on one level, give yourself permission to do some of that work and not have to fix everyone else's problems, just diving into yourself. The second piece that I think really gives us the meaning behind that is our influence in the realm of education is more powerful than we even know. So in those moments when we feel like we have a really crappy day, or we feel like we didn't have the model lesson that anyone wants to post on YouTube, I guarantee that we impacted a human life, that someone saw us smile, someone heard our moment of compassion, someone saw us doing something we love, and that for them was what they needed in the moment. And even if we can't measure it on a test score, or we can't see it in the perfectly crafted lesson, that the work we do matters. And so we have to take care of ourselves as the main driver of that work.
So powerful. We'll be right back with holidays and a good news story for this morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for popping into the Daily Drop-In. Chase, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all that you shared in the last half an hour. If you are just popping in now, holy moly, do you need to listen to the end and then re-listen to this entire beginning, because you are definitely like right up my alley in how you communicate. You have constantly shared some incredible strategies for educators, action steps, and really hitting at the core of a topic that many educators in the Teach Better community have shared wanting strategies on. And what I really appreciate, Chase, is you have this wonderful way of sharing information where it's research based. There's a lot of really good topics we could dive further into if we're interested. But you also have these overarching strategies that we can keep in mind, that we can constantly be referring back to. And you've been able to share very, very strategic takeaways of what can you go do literally within the next 2 hours to be better in so many different spaces, but especially self-care and conducting professional development. So this has been a whirlwind of a conversation so far. I really, really appreciate you sharing. We are going to get into some good news and some holidays for today. But before we get started, Chase, are you up for a little bit of celebrating?
Sure, 100%. I mean, even though it's early on a Tuesday, there's never not a reason to celebrate.
Always good to celebrate. I do want to mention, as we get into holidays, today is a little bit of like a sparse day. You know, sometimes we open up our holidays at nationaltoday.com and there's like 52 holidays of like absurd, ridiculous things. Today it's pretty basic. So adding in that it's Julie Ford's birthday here on the Teach Better team, my mother, I feel like is just fitting because there's only so many days to celebrate, so many things to celebrate today. We got to slip that one in, the big birthday for her. So shout out to Julie. It's also National Shrimp Day. Are you a shrimp eater?
I am 100% a shrimp eater. My son says he's allergic to shrimp. He's not. He just can't stand it. So that just kind of gives me even more motivation to eat all the shrimp. We are huge, huge fans of shrimp.
Isn't it funny that sometimes it's really, really great when members of your family aren't a fan of a food you like because it's more for you, right? Like
For sure.
more for you.
Yeah. And shrimp are not cheap. So, I mean, if we're going to buy them, I want to consume as much of the shrimp as possible.
I think this is a great mindset. I don't know what anyone's plans are today for dinner, but maybe shrimp should be incorporated into this evening's recipe. That'll be good. Something that I'm not sure I can condone for today, because I can already tell it's going to be a great Tuesday. I don't know that I want to put this into my day, but it is World Clean Your Room Day. So I don't know if anybody needs to go scrub their rooms, but today's the day to do it according to our holiday list. Are you going to be cleaning today, Chase?
Probably every day. Again, with little kids, it's like they just destroy everything we clean. They just destroy it right away. And we're just in this cycle of cleaning and destruction and cleaning and destruction. So for sure. But I'm going to use that as my stress distraction strategy. I'm just going to plug in my podcasts and my soul jams, and I'm just going to clean away at it.
I love it. I feel the same way with like schools right now with classrooms. It can't ever be clean enough. There's always something to organize. There's always something to wipe down. There's always just this constant rotation of like spray bottle with the cleaner and the paper towels that you have to rip 100 times to get perfect. It's just cleaning is a part of our world these days. But today apparently is the day to clean your room. So if you need a little motivation, at least you can say while you're doing it, you're celebrating a holiday. So
right.
Love it. Last but not least, why not, just as a shout out, it's Bono's birthday. So put on some music while you're cleaning, maybe. That could be a thing.
Yeah. I can see just combining all these. You have your shrimp feast and then you clean, listening to some Bono. You hit them all together. And then you shout out a happy birthday to mom.
Yeah, exactly. I like this. And Chase, I think that while they're doing that, they also need to go pick up a copy of your book or visit your website, because that's been a hot topic in the comments today, that people are so excited to continue to consume your information that we'll just have to add that into today's celebration, celebrating Chase as well.
All right. I'll take it.
Yeah. Our good news story for today I thought was really interesting. Chase, we've discussed on the show that a good news story is not only to build us up, but also to foster relationships with others and find ways to incorporate this with our students. So this I thought was really interesting. It's a new practice that they're putting into place. They're creating a coral reef restoration. They're working on that. And what they're deciding to do for this restoration is that they've 3D printed the reef to recreate the national diversity. So it was interesting listening to their mindset. They're actually using 3D printers before they go in to do all the work and restoration on this coral reef, which I really valued, because as we were looking at how they're utilizing technology to, better our world, I know a lot of educators right now have access to really, really creative tools like a 3D printer, but don't always know how to bring in that that practical element of why this is a useful tool outside of creating a keychain or, just getting started with it. So I love this emphasis. I think this would be really interesting to bring into a classroom and give a more practical use for this incredible technology tool of 3D printing, and be able to say, hey, look, we have scientists and creators that are utilizing this technology to better our oceans, which is really, really fascinating.
For sure. I think to have a moment where technology seems to be good, so much of the energy goes into like all the ways that like social media is driving everything wrong. And we know that there's so much good in every medium. But to have really concrete examples of here's some technology and here's some thought leaders who are just taking some innovative ideas and they're doing something practical with it. I think as an educator, that's always inspiring to know that, okay, good exists and people are working really hard. And so how can I do the same? But also, how can I let my students know that this exists as an option for them to explore with something that they're passionate about or interested in, that it's not all just analyzing quadratic formula, that there's some real benefits behind knowing this stuff.
No, I love that real world connection. I totally agree. Chase, as we wrap up our conversation here and head into a wonderful Tuesday, May 10th, it's going to be a beautiful day ahead. I want to make sure that we share out your contact information. I know educators need to follow you on social media. They need to go pick up a copy of the book. It sounds incredible. And I want them to make sure they also head to your website to get those resources that support some of the information we were able to share here on the show, because people were eating it up. So where can we head to stay connected to you?
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram are the main places I post via my handle at Chase Melky. My website, affectiveliving.com, affective with an A, is where I have information on my speaking, my workshops, but as it's also a link to my blog where I've been writing for years around social emotional learning in the classroom and for educators. Beyond that, my book, The Burnout Cure, I've got a couple resources coming out soon this year. I have a quick reading guide through ASCD coming out soon on battling burnout. And then this fall, I'm going to be developing, I'm currently in the process of drafting a book for school leaders. How, from the organizational level, do we help with retention and teacher performance by taking care of our staff? So those are some of the main ways. And then just a random Google, you'll find all sorts of stuff out there. I'm sure my first staff photo that is super embarrassing, you'll see it. Feel free to just explore the deep, deep web of what's out there on me.
Oh, so good. Chase, thank you so much for waking up bright and early to share all this insight with our Teach Better family. I hope this isn't the last time that you're joining us. It's such a great conversation this morning. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for bringing me on, and for everyone in the Teach Better community. It is great to meet you all, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon.
Yes, friends, we hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, May 10th. Please let us know if you need anything. Don't forget that we'll be back tomorrow for Daily Drop-In. We also have Brain Break tomorrow as an opportunity for you to hang out with the team in the afternoon, and so much more as we continue coming your way with surprises in our Teach Better community. If you haven't checked out teachbetter.com to read a blog or listen to a podcast recently, please head that way. We'd love to hear from you. We have guest bloggers that are constantly talking about new and innovative ideas. So head over there anytime you're looking to challenge your mind, and we will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye, friends.